Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we'll be learning how to make a corset dress with waist flounce. So I have my measurements here ready. I'll be going off by 5 inches because I don't want it to expose. So I'm just placing my tape rule 5 inches above before I start place it on the paper. So my armhole measurement, also my chest line, is 7.5. The bust point I'm working with is 10 inches. The under bust is 13.5, and the waist measurement, the half length, is 16 inches. Okay, so after getting these measurements, I'm going to take my bust span measurement, also known as the nipple to nipple. For this person, it's 4 inches, and I'll mark that across and make it into a straight line. So once this is done, I'll take my waist dart. So for this, I'm taking 1 inch. Depending on how big the bust is, you can take between 0.5, 3/4, 1, or 1.5. 1.5 is, I think, the maximum. So for this, I'm taking 1 inch on the under bust and also on the waistline, and I'll also make that into a straight line. Okay, so on my bust point, remember these are bust points, I go down by ½ inch because I'm trying to avoid any pointy edge that may give me, and then using my curved ruler, I'll connect these marks to my under bust. Okay, so our dart is taken. The next thing I want to do now is to take the gap between my two busts. Remember, one bust between one bust and the neck, they don't just join together. There's usually a gap. So depending on how busty the person is, that is how small the gap will be. For example, for a very busty person, the gap won't be so obvious because the breasts will be so close together. But for somebody that is not so busty, there will be obvious space in between, but shouldn't be more than 1.5 inches. So for this person, I'm working with 1 inch, and my 1 inch, I'll divide it by 2 because this is going to be on fold. This is just one side of the front bodice. So divided by 2 is going to give me ½ inch, and I'll mark ½ inch on my bust point and also on my chest line, like this. So I make that into a straight line. Now I will need to decide the type of neckline that I want for this corset. Okay, can either be a sweetheart or a U neckline or whatever you want. But before I do that, I need to decide the measurements that I'm going to be using for the upper part so that I can curve my armhole. And to do this, you need to measure from your chest line in front, from one chest to another. I'll try to get a picture to attach to this so that you understand what I'm doing. So it's just measuring from where your armhole is, from one armhole to another in front. Okay, so if you take this measurement, you need to take this measurement on your client. For this person, is 13 inches for this person. So remember, I said it is also on fold, so divided by 2 is going to give me 6.5. So I'm going to take the 6.5. That's going to guide me on where I'm going to curve my armhole. So I have the 6.5 inches here, and then to curve the armhole, I'll take my bust measurement. The bust I'm working with is 32 inches. Divided by 4 is going to give me 8 inches. So I'm measuring the 8 inches like this, and I had 2 inches allowance to it. So using my curved ruler, I'm going to take my armhole curve. Okay, once I have my armhole curve, I can now decide the type of neckline. So the depth of the neckline that I want, remember we have gone by 5 inches upwards, so you should take note of that so that you won't go too low. So I think 7 inches is okay for me. You can do 6, you can do 8, depending on how deep you want. And I'll be going with a sweetheart neckline. So using my curved ruler, I'm just going to curve my neckline to my armhole like this, so I can now extend my line upwards. I hope you understand it up to this stage. What we've done so far is we took our measurements, took 1 inch dart on this side and on the waistline, and then we make it into a straight line. Then on the upper part here, I took 1/2 inch for the space between the bust, and here I measured from one side of the armhole to the other on the front, divided it by 2, and I used it on the upper part here so that I can get my armhole curve. Then I drew my neckline. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to take my bust dart measurement. So for my bust dart, on my bust point, I'm going to be going 1 inch upward. But before I do that, I need to take my full measurement. So I'll be taking my waist measurement now, and the waist I'm working with is 27 inches. So 27 divided by 4 is going to give me 6 3/4. So I'm taking that measurement now, and I'm also adding 2 inches allowance to it. So I'll connect this like this. So now I can take my bust dart measurement, 1 inch, and like I did for this, I'll be going off by 1/2 inch before connecting this to my bust point. Okay, now I have my bust dart and my waist dart. Okay, so on the upper part here, I'll be taking 1/2 inch dart just to tighten the upper part of my corset. So to do this, I just take my tape rule and measure 1/2 inch on both sides, and then connect it to 1/2 inch before the bust point, like we did for the others. Okay, and this dart will also be going off. So if you take this measurement now, we are taking 1 inch dart in whole. So the 1 inch dart, I'm going to have to replace it back here, so that I'll have enough for my chest line. I won't be having any shortage. Then I'm going to redraw my armhole curve. Okay, I hope you understand it up to this stage. So now the next thing I will do is to draw my armhole curve. I already have something similar on the channel, so if you are familiar with it, I'm sure you'll be following me easily. And to draw my armhole curve, from the point of my space in between the bust, I'm going to connect it like this to my under bust using a curved ruler. So like this, we have one side of our cup ready. Before I can find the other side, I need to close up this bust dart, so I'll cut off this measurement before I do that. Okay, so before I cut this off, if you look at these two darts, it's not rhymed by the time we want to sew it. So I want to take the measurement of oil, so I have 4 1/4 here, and if I go here, the 4 1/4 stops around here. So I'm just going to find a way to blend this to my armhole, so that by the time I cut it out, it will be equal on these two sides. So now we can cut. The darts are gone now. This is the first side of the corset. So now we are going to close our bust dart so that we can get the other parts of our cup. So I'm going to slash this now, not cut through, and then I'm going to close the dart using a masking tape. Okay, so now using my curved ruler also, I'm going to find a good curve and then connect and do the other parts of my corset. So once I have this, I can connect it, and then I have the other parts like this. So now I can cut it out also. So these are our pieces. This is what we have. Now just rush through the back for this quickly. I'm sure by now we'll know how to, and you can label this. Okay, you can label this center front, side front, because they look similar, so you know that this is where this goes to your middle of your bust, and this is the outer part. Just label it anyhow you know you'll be able to understand it. Okay, so this is our back bodice. I already took my measurements. I went off by 5 inches like I did for the front, and this is my armhole measurement, and this is the actual waistline. The actual waistline is 14 inches. Remember, we used 16 for the front because of the 2 inches bust that. So the back is 14 inches, but for the front I'll be adding a 1.5 inch band, and the band is not going to extend to the back, so that was why I added 1.5 inch, so that I can make up for what I'm adding in the front. And I went ahead to take my zipper allowance and my waist that. Then I took my measurement and I measured 6.5 inches like I did for the front, to know where to cuff my armhole, and then I connected it to my bust. So now I'm going to cut this out, but before I do that I need to decide the type of neckline I want for the back. So for the back I want a bit low neckline, so I'll be going by 7.5 or 8 inches, let's say 7.5, and then using my curve I'll connect this to my armhole, and then now I can cut this out. So this is my back bodice and this is my front. So now I'm going to cut this on my main fabric, but before I do this, you can do this on your fabric or just create another pattern for it. Remember that you have to add allowances, so I'll be adding half inch allowance all around like this for my front and my back where necessary. So I'll take all this now to my main fabric and then cut it out. Okay, so before I forget, I'll be taking 2 inches off the upper part of the corset, because that is the style that I want. So to do this, I'm going to try to close this dart here, and I'll be holding it with a masking tape. You can see why it is necessary for you to match up the upper part after you take your dart. So once I close this now, I take my tape rule and measure 2 inches down all around. You can do 1.5, you can do 1 inch depending on what you're going for. So 2 inches is okay for me. And once I have my 2 inches, you can use a curve or you can just use your free hand to connect them together like I'm doing. My marker is going on and I don't have another one here, so kindly bear with me. So I'm taking my 2 inches off like this, and once I take it off, I'm going to cut it out. Okay, so I have this, I can separate this now. So I'll add half inch allowance round this, half inch round this. There's no need of adding because I already closed in between, because I already closed the dart there. And also for the front, I'll be closing my dart before transferring it to my main fabric. Okay, so these are my pieces now. This is the front. Remember, like I said I was going to close up the dart, so I did that, and this is what I have. I closed my dart before cutting it off. So unfold, it's going to be like this. When you open it up, you will have this. So I cut two of these, one for my main fabric and one for my lining. For my main fabric, I added soft wadding to it, and for my lining, I added just ordinary paper stay, just to make it stronger a bit. So I went ahead to cut two of these, and I also cut it on my lace fabric also, and I'll be placing this on it. So my front part is settled, and these are my back pieces. So this is the first part of the back. Like I did for the front, I cut out 4 of these, 2 for main fabric and 2 for lining. Remember, I did not close this dart, it's still opened, unlike the front. That is why we are having 4 and not 2. And I went ahead to cut out the lace material also. This is the other side of the back bodice. And for my cups, I cut out 4 for the main cup, that's 2 for lining and 2 for main fabric. So for the lining, I added soft wadding, and for the main fabric, I added thick wadding to pad it. So this is the other side of the bust, the side of the bust, and this is the 2 inches upper part that I cut out. So remember, I added ½ inch allowance all through. Okay, so this is it. I added ½ inch allowance all through. So now the next thing is for me to identify them, and then we start to sew. So this is a dress, so it has a skirt part which I already cut, and I'm going to show us now, and then I'm also going to cut out our flounce. So this is the skirt part of the dress. It's a straight skirt, and I cut out both the front and the back, and I've also lined the lace with a doll face material. Okay, and I went ahead to iron it. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out my, okay, so for my flounce, I need to locate the midpoint of my skirt. So I'm turning it to this side so that we can see it well, and this is the midpoint. I already marked that with a chalk. Okay, so the flounce is not going to be starting from the midpoint, it's going to be starting on the side. So from my midpoint, I'm going to measure 4 inches, but remember, this is going to be having a dart that I'm going to close, so I'll extend this by ½ inch here. So I'll measure 4.5. That is where my flounce will be starting. And also there is an allowance here. I have 2 inches allowance. So from here, because I don't want the flounce to enter into my allowance, I measure out the 2 inches here. So my flounce is going to be starting from here. It will run through like this and then go down and stop at the hip line, or 1 inch below the hip. So this is my hip line, so I can stop it here or stop it around here. So to know the radius for my flounce, I measure from where the flounce is starting like this, and then I'm going to cuff it downwards the way it is going to go. So if you are stopping on the hip line, that's 13.5 inches. But if I'm extending it, I can extend it by 1 and make it 14.5 inches. So with the radius for my flounce, because it's going like this, the radius for my flounce is going to be 14.5 inches. So 14.5 inches divided by 6.28. 14.5 divided by 6.28 is going to give me 2.3. So now to know the radius, I want the length of my flounce to be around 6 or 7 inches. So let's say I'm going with 7 inches. I have 7 inches to 2.3, but I won't be using 2.3. I want to use 2.5 because I want just one pleat. So the 2.5 is going to give me enough room to be able to pleat the flounce. So 2.5 plus 7 inches is going to give me 9.5 inches. So I can fold by 9.5 inches. I had ½ inch allowance for sewing, so I'll be folding this by 10 inches. So I'll fold into 2, and then I'm going to fold into 4. Okay, so my fabric is folded now. So I'm going to measure 10 inches. Remember, the total length is 10 inches, and it is from the 10 inches that we're going to take our radius. So I'm measuring 10 inches all around. And then I'm going to connect them together. Okay, so now I'm taking 2.5 inches off my 10 inches. There are several ways of making a flounce. You can do it in a spiral form also, but I think this works better for me, so I just go with this. And I'm going to cut this off with my scissors. Okay, so now that we've cut out the flare, I'm just going to open it up on one side. So once we open it up, we're going to cut 2 of these. So I cut the second one already. I'm going to iron interface on it, either gum stay or air stay or paper stay, to make it stronger, and then I'm going to use them to turn each other. But before I do that, let me just quickly show us what it's going to look like. Remember, these are the chalked areas that we want to put our flounce. So it's just going to start from here. It's going to start from here, and then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be putting 1 or 2 pleats here. So once I pleat it, it will run through up to this place, and then it will go down like this, following my line. So, and it will stop here where I want it to stop. I hope you can see. So it will just fall and go like that. We'll see this as the video goes on. So now I'm just going to go and iron interface on it, and then turn the flare with each other, and then give it a good press. So I've ironed paper stay on the flare, and I use them to turn each other, then I give it a good press. So this is what we have. Now to fix it on the bodice, on the skirt, remember this is our midpoint, and this is where I want it to start. So I'm just going to fold the first one like this, and then place it where I want it to start, and then the little pleat, so I'll hold this with a pin. I hope you can see this. And then I'm going to make 1 pleat here. So it will go on up to where my allowance is. And watch carefully from here. I'm going to continue like this. I'm not going to be folding it over. Remember, it's like this. So I'm just going to shift it like this, and then I'm going to continue. So I'll keep pinning it till it gets to where I want, and you have to make sure that there is no fold. So as you are pinning, you check that. And that is it. So once you are through, it will just fall off like this. It's a small flounce. So you can see what we have here. So I'm just going to set this aside now so that I can work on the upper part. So to sew the cups together, remember it's like this. You first put this together and then sew it. Once you are done with sewing this, then you will sew the upper part also on it. So I've done this for this now. I just sewed the 2 parts together, and then I continued by sewing my upper part, and I trimmed it up. So I want to use this trimming to embellish it, so I just cut it and then sew it on the line. That's part of the reason why I measured 2 inches upward, just so that it can guide me on where I want to put this. So I've done this for the 2 busts. I'll repeat this for the lining also, but I just saw this size 32 bra cup lying around. Okay, you can see the size here, and I'm working with a size 32 piece. So I don't know, I'm not sure yet, but I may put it inside my cup just to give it a kind of bounce for me. I've not decided that yet, but I can. So I'm just going to trim the upper part off or leave it like that if the person doesn't really want it to be exposed, because this is going to be on the bust exactly. So this person doesn't really like exposing parts of their bust, so I'll just leave a bit of this also for them to just shape it around there. Okay, so now after doing this, I'm just going to be sewing it inside my cup, the space for my cup here like this. And I'll work on the back part also, so I don't want this video to be too long. That's why I'm rushing this now. Everything that I've done now, I'll repeat it also for the lining. Then I'll bring everything back just to explain the sewing process to us. Okay, so this bra cup, I added this trimming to it and also sewn in some lace fabric like this on top and covers just to beautify it more. So I later added my bra cup inside. The next thing I will need to do is just to sew in my bra cup inside this small hole like I did for this, and I added the trimmings also on the mid part and on the dart line. Okay, and then after sewing my bra cup inside this, I also used the trimming to beautify it round like this. So the same thing I did on this side, I'm going to repeat for this side also. I'll be sewing this inside my bra cup, and then I'm going to be adding trimming here and also round the bra cup. So after doing this now, I'll do all this also to the lining, of course without the trimmings, and I'm going to work on the back. Okay, so both parts of the front have been completed. Now you can see how beautiful this is looking, and I also did the same to the lining. So this is the lining also. You can see even without a bra cup, even the lining is standing on its own. Okay, so we'll need to trim off all this area and set this aside. So now I've worked on my back. Like I said, if you have been watching our videos, you'll be able to complete this back bodice on your own. I just joined the half length and turned it with lining, and then I added the skirt to it, and then I went ahead to fix my zipper. I don't want this video to be too long. That was why I decided to do this off camera. Okay, so now the next thing is just to join my front to the skirt. And to do this, I'm going to fix my flounce to my skirt just like I showed us. So I just sewed this like this and then turned it and sew it to the ball. Like I said when I was drafting, the front part of the dress is going to be having a 1.5 inch band. So I cut out this straight fabric 2.5 inches. I added paper stay to it and I ironed it. So I'm going to be sewing it to the skirt like this, and then I'll later join this front part also to it after I've turned it with lining. Okay, so I've gone ahead to add my band to it. I just sew it to each side, both the downside and the upper part, and this is what our dress is looking. So we're almost through with that dress. You can see how beautiful this is looking. So when I was sewing it, I remembered I wanted to add a strap, so I quickly added it by just putting it in between my lining. Okay, let me show you. So I just put the strap in between my lining and my main bodice before turning everything out. So I will sew this to the back. I can't do that again because I already closed it up and I don't want to loosen it, so I'm just going to sew it to the back like that. But because I remembered for the front, I was able to neatly tuck it in so that it won't be showing outside. So please don't forget to iron every step of the way. I'm just rushing this because this is a tutorial. So this is what we have now. The next thing is just for us to place the front and back bodies over each other, and then we shape the side, and then we decide on the type of sleeve that we want to put on this, and the dress is ready. Okay, so this is the completed dress. You can see how beautiful this is looking. So like I said, I just sew my strap to the back externally like this. So if you are doing yours and you want to add a strap, make sure you sew it inside. It's always more beautiful and neater. You can see how the front is, and this is the cup area, the band, and this is the flounce. So give this a try and let's see what you come up with. And I just added this sleeve to it. The fabric left wasn't remade because I used 2.5 yards of fabric for this dress, so I just made something, an off-shoulder sleeve with like ball hand. So I passed the elastic around here just to give it the puffy effect. Kindly subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye.